and welcome back to the channel. It's Lit Life with Miranda Reads, and today we are talking about Galentine's Day. Galentine's Day first came into this world in 2010 a la a little known show called Parks and Rec. In season 1, episode 16, Leslie Knope, the fictional deputy director of the Parks and Rec department in Pawnee, Indiana, is shown celebrating this holiday with her nearest and dearest female friends. Now, ever since that episode aired, every February 13th has been Galentine's Day across the world. Galentine's Day primarily focuses on celebrating female friendships, whether your best gal is a friend, a sister, a cousin, a co-worker, your mother. Any and all are welcome to celebrate. Because this is a booktube channel, I'm going to recommend some of my very favorite Galentine's Day books for you all. Let's get started. So the very first book is actually my most recently read and the inspiration for this video, Anne of Green Gables. There's honestly nothing like reading Anne of Green Gables for the first time, or the 5th time, or the 50th. Honestly, I could read this book over and over and over, and every time it gets me. To me, this is the quintessential book about finding your very first female best friend, and it really holds across the years. The star of this book, Anne Shirley, is an orphan. She's been through poverty, abuse, lonesomeness. All she wants is to be loved. Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, these are two siblings who never got married, and they still live on the family farm, Green Gables. And they have decided that since they're getting older, Matthew needs a boy to help him run the farm. Only much to their surprise, Anne shows up instead. At first, Anne is terrified of being sent back to the orphanage, but soon her whimsical ways, poetical language, and boundless love wins over Matthew and Marilla. And despite having a roof over her head, food on the table, and a stable home life for the first time in her life, Anne knows she is missing something dearly, dearly beloved. A best friend. A bosom friend, if you will. Enter Diana. Diana is the nearest neighbor to Anne, and the two of them could not be more different. Diana, a quiet, reserved girl who prefers reading over adventuring, definitely does not seem like she'd be the perfect best friend on paper. But all it takes is one meeting and they are swearing eternal friendship. And that is a bond that will never, ever break. Anne of Green Gables, the book, follows Anne from ages 11 to 16, and the book meanders in and out of her life, her various adventures, misadventures, mishaps, and what have you. And throughout all of that, Diana is right by Anne's side. Whether it be drinking currant wine, an accident, transversing through the haunted woods at night, reenacting old plays with disastrous results, or creating a storytelling club, these girls are never, ever far apart. What truly endears me to these girls is the genuine love and affection they express for each other. There is not a moment that goes by where you are ever in doubt that these two girls are the best of friends. It's just one of those books that just holds a special place in your heart no matter how old you get. The next one for Galentine's Day is Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg. This was my very first Fannie Flagg book, and it certainly was not my last, but honestly it is my favorite, 110%. Fried Green Tomatoes has a dual storyline. The present era is in the 1980s, and we follow Evelyn Couch as she's forced to visit her mother-in-law at a nursing home. Mother-in-law is very unpleasant. Honestly, Evelyn's marriage is very unpleasant. And one time she wanders away from that visit and she meets Mrs. Threadgood. Now, Mrs. Threadgood is also a resident at the nursing home, but she's also alone and always alone. From there, the two women strike up a unlikely friendship, and one of the things they do is talk about the past, specifically Mrs. Threadgood's, which brings us to our second storyline. We follow Imogene, aka Idgie, who is Mrs. Threadgood's sister-in-law, and Idgie's best friend, Ruth. Now, Idgie has always been a tomboy, adventurous, wild child, but then her older brother dies, and she kind of becomes a shell of herself. Then Ruth Jameson comes to town, and Idgie finds a reason to keep pushing, eventually opening her very own cafe called the Whistle Stop Cafe. these two women take on abusive marriages, racism, poverty, what have you, all the while raising children and the entire town up from their bootstraps. I think that makes sense. What I love about this one is the way that Imogene and Ruth selflessly help each other. As soon as one stumbles, the other is there picking them up and carrying them on. And I also really enjoyed the relationship between Mrs. Threadgood and Evelyn. The way these two women at different walks of life and different needs find each other and create their own found family together was really amazing, heartwarming, everything above. There was never a moment in this book where you could doubt that any of these characters love each other with their whole hearts. So the next one I picked up was actually because it almost won the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Romance. This one's called In 5 Years. However, after reading the book, I would argue that it doesn't actually belong on romance. Because there was love in the book, but I would say the friendship love completely overpowered anything romance related. The romance was really just secondary or even tertiary to the themes of friendship in this book. We followed Dani. She is a lawyer and she is on top of her game. Ever since her brother passed away, she has planned out every single moment, every single day to the T, including get engaged, then get married, etc., etc. Her best friend, Bella, she is a free spirit, haphazard artist, disaster of a person. And while the two of them could not be more different, they have had a friendship that has literally lasted forever. In December 2020, Dani's boyfriend proposes to her, and that is another check off of the Dani's planned life list. She goes to bed that night and wakes up, and there's a different ring on her finger. There's a different guy in the apartment, and she's not even in her same apartment. She realizes that the date is 2025, 5 years in the future. After a very few confusing moments, she eventually wakes back up in her own time zone. Time, place, I think. And she completely dismisses everything that happened as a wild, crazy dream. Except 5 years later, Dani meets her best friend's new boyfriend, and it's the guy, the apartment guy, the guy from the future, but he's dating Bella. So when I got to that point in the book, I was thinking it's going to be another like, oh, do I break up my best friend? Do I steal her boyfriend? Obviously we were meant to be sort of things. And I kind of wanted to put the book down. But I kept going because everyone on Goodreads loved it. And I was like, well, if you guys like it, I'm going to give it a good shot. And I'm so glad I did. Without giving too much away, this book made me ugly cry, especially that ending. And at the same time, I'm really happy that I've read it. The friendship between Dani and Bella is such an unrelenting theme throughout this book, and you can feel it underlying every single gesture and phrase they speak. And it's really what warmed me to the book despite the ugly tears. It really brought me into this book. So the next one, I was kind of debating if I should even put it on the list, but at the same time, I feel like it fits really well. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book follows Nora. We meet her at probably the lowest point in her life. She loses her job, friends, isolation, and she makes a snap decision. One that could affect anything and everything she does in the future. But just before the consequences of that decision are known, she wakes up in a library. A library unlike one that she has ever seen before. The Midnight Library is run by Mrs. Elm, who may or may not be a beloved teacher from Nora's past. The first book Mrs. Elm hands Nora is the Book of Regrets, and it is a long book. It is a heavy book. And after Nora reads it, she realizes just how much she's regretted about her life. Mrs. Elm explains that every book in this library is a life that Nora could have lived if she had chosen differently. And if Nora finds one of these lives to be worth living, then she can choose to join it permanently. Therefore, Nora begins to explore her regrets and try and find out if there is a future. I will admit this is a surprising choice for Galentine's Day. There are some underlying themes of Nora with her best friend and Nora with her mother, and regrets and choices that go along with those. But the focus of this book isn't on female friendship. It's all on Nora and her friendship with herself, I guess, really. The various books that Nora reads each brings a different perspective and understanding to her life, one that she would not have gotten if she had stayed focused on her current life. To me, this one was a soul healing book, where you're reading it and you're experiencing a heartbreak and heart-wrenching moments, and you just feel kind of torn apart. But at the end of the day, you feel better, you feel whole, and you feel like it's worth it. And I don't know if I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but like this one gave me a lot to think about and a lot to understand. And I really loved this book because of it. And the very last one is near and dear to my heart, Little Women. This is one of the very few books that I have read more times than I can count. And each time I read it, I feel like I come away with a different message and a different understanding of the book. So it's definitely held that test of time for me. This story follows 4 sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. And these 4 sisters couldn't be more different. Meg is beautiful and romantic, Jo is a rambunctious tomboy, Beth is frail but strong, and Amy is the artistic brat of the group. And they're used to having a very vivacious and grand life, except all of their money is lost and they have to move to New England, and what's worse is that they have to move without their father. Their father is a chaplain in the Civil War and he is gone. Not like dead gone, but he's just like not there. And the 4 girls, along with their mother, have to face having a Christmas without their father, and it's jarring and sad to them. The family decides to keep busy and kind of just work their way through the sadness. Meg and Jo gets jobs, Beth spends a lot of time mediating, and Amy does her best to fit in with all the other girls at school. This book is really more of a slice of life of the Civil War era, where you learn about all of these girls and what they do and how their lives are as they're just juggling all of these very adult situations. I loved watching them go through so many adventures and mishaps, and watching them grow and mature and becoming the little women that they are. And throughout all of this, they never lose what's most important to them, their family. That unwavering love and support of the girls to each other is really what knits this story together for me. And I'm not saying that they're perfect. The sisters do squabble, they do feel very real, but you just know that anytime any one of them reaches any sort of problem, the other sisters will be there to take care of them. I really truly adore this story, and honestly, all this talking about makes me want to go for a reread. I've got the time because Galentine's Day is not until February 13th, so definitely going to read this one again before then. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading and happy Galentine's Day to you. Bye.